Good morning.
Good
I think we're
morning.
hopefully on YouTube. We got a nice crowd here this morning, so hopefully we'll have a lot of input in our lesson.
Hopefully Sunday.
Yeah, no way I'll set my nail this morning, so we're gonna have to invite some guests for him. I think he took a bath. And good morning, if anybody's listening, I hope Patsy and Cecil and T and that Bonnie and Jim usually listen to us, and I'm hoping my daughter and son-in-law are listening in Florida where it's probably sunny and not all rainy like it is here. But it is 46 degrees, so that counts for something, I think, even though it's raining and nasty. But good morning again. We're on page 20. We're going to talk about, I'm sorry, because of the rain, I think I have a frog in my throat this morning. It's Christian duty toward God and man. And we're looking at Matthew chapter 22. We're going to do verses 15 through 22 and then 34 through 40. But we're going to start out with the golden text. It says, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy strength, and with all thy mind, and thy neighbor as thyself." And that's something that we've probably heard since we've heard anything in our life, that we should be love the Lord and that we should be kind to or calls our neighbor, but our neighbor consists of anybody else that's not us, is what my understanding of it, I guess. Not just the David Harris, my neighbor across the road, but anybody is considered your neighbor that you might have any contact with of any kind. Our lesson aim says a Christian will love God supremely. He will love his neighbor as himself, and he will obey the laws of his country. Let me see, I was going to look. If you remember last week, we were talking about where Jesus is in the final period of his life right now. Last week we had talked about his triumphant entry into the city of Jerusalem. And remember how they had gone into the city and they had found the donkey and the colt that had been prophesied in the Old Testament. And they brought it to Jesus and he rode it into town. And if we remember at that time that there were people out, that it was a glorious greeting to him, that they were laying like the palm branches and that they were making like a kingly entry into the city for him, that they were praising him. And even the children were yelling, "Hosanna, Hosanna," to him as he came in. We remember too, once he got into the temple, things weren't going so well there in the Gentile area of the temple where they allowed them to come in to pray. If you remember, they had set up where they were selling birds and pigeons and stuff for sacrifice. They were changing money. They were changing into the currency that the temple took. It was assumed that the priests were kind of getting a little bit of profit off this business that they had set up inside the temple. And if we remember, Jesus was really, really upset by that. And it kind of was unlike the character that we had seen of Jesus before. It said he went in there and he was overturning the tables and he was throwing the money in the money changers. And, you know, as I read, the fun thing about reading, you kind of visualize what you see happening. And, you know, if you think about him going in the temple and just throwing the tables across and the people really confused about what was going on. But that's not what he meant that temple to be. You know, like we said, if we had a peddler's mall booth set up in this church we had talked about last week, and we're trying to do that, and Buford was up here talking to people that were coming to the altar, it just would totally disrupt what was going on, that you can't mix that commerce and that busyness with your time with the Lord. That was a time that these people were coming to meet with the Lord, and it was being really taken advantage of for monetary gain. And then we remember as soon as he got that stuff settled down, that he went about healing the people that had come to that temple and teaching the people that had come to it. So he had to really quieten things down and make it into a more worshipful place to do it. And you know, and not to say you can worship anywhere. It doesn't have to be in a church with nobody there. You know, some of the best times are in your car going to work or whatever. So there's not exact places that you have to go. But, you know, when we come into our services of worship, we do want quietness. There's times at your home, you know, when you're going to spend quiet time that, you know, you don't want a bunch of the TV screaming and people wanting food and, you know, fix something to eat. So we definitely need quiet time to get the quality time with the Lord. You know, you can't hear somebody in a rumble and roar all the time, and it's good. It's even good for your soul to slow down. You know, if you think about it, sometimes there's so much. We were talking about last night, anxiety. It seems like in this generation and worrying, because it never slows down. It's always, we're such a high speed that nothing ever slows down till you can think and know who you are, who the Lord is. So I think, you know, that's part of what he was trying to get across to these people, that, you know, that this was the place of worship, period. You know, do those other things outside the temple. So I'll go ahead and read our scripture this morning. It started in Matthew 22:15. And I'll just go through 22 right now. It says, "Then went the Pharisees and took counsel how they might entangle him in his talk. And they sent out unto him their disciples with the Herodians, saying, Master, we know that thou art true, and teachest the way of God in truth. Neither carest thou for any man, for thou regardest not the person of men. Tell us therefore, what thinkest thou? Is it lawful to give tribute unto Caesar or not? But Jesus perceived their wickedness and said, Why tempt ye me, ye hypocrites? Show me the tribute money. And they brought unto him a penny. And he said unto them, Who is this image and superscription? They said unto him, Caesar's. Then saith he unto them, Render therefore unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. When they heard these words, they marveled and left him and went away." So, first wanted to talk about the people that they're mentioning here. The talks about the Pharisees and the Sadducees in this lesson, and the Herodians. And if it's something that, I don't know, people you might be watching on the internet, but if you haven't heard this, the Pharisees, it says, are a religious and political in Palestine in New Testament times. They had a strong commitment to observing the laws. It says 613 in all. They are ready to criticize sinners. They trusted in themselves that they were righteous. Hearts did not match outward appearance. They wanted human praise. So they're a religious group at the time that were really focused on the Old Testament, the laws that Moses had put forth to the people. That's really, that they really poked and prodded the people to keep all those laws. And it says there were 613 laws, and that's a lot of laws to be able to keep all the time. You know, people have a hard time with the 10 Commandments. But to keep all of 16, and if we remember, they were quick to criticize people if they didn't do what they thought was right, that they held themselves above, and they would stand in the streets and do prayers, and they wanted people to notice how religious they were. You know, it wasn't necessarily in here, but they wanted to see it, people to see that they were religious. And then the Sadducees that it talked about, says they came from more of the upper crust, like the wealthy of society, the priests, merchants, and aristocrats were the Sadducees. They didn't believe there was a resurrection. They believed, they said, believed only the original law of Moses, the Pentateuch, didn't believe in heaven or angels or spirits, so they kind of had a real different kind of closed mindset to them. But the priests were part of this, and they were kind of a higher society than even it said the Pharisees could be, regular people could actually belong to that. And then there was the group called the Herodians that they were really kind of wanted to align Jewish society with the Romans. They weren't, strictly keep the Jewish people separate. They kind of wanted to be more in line and love the one you with, I guess, is something I could think that kind of go along with their new government and blend in and be a part and make yourself something in that. So it's the first verse was there. Then went the Pharisees and took counsel as to how they might entangle him and talk. So right away, Jesus is coming to town with a whole lot of praise and pomp and circumstance in the people's eyes. But these Pharisees couldn't stand it, so they gathered together in a council and they wanted to plot on exactly how they were going to trap him to where they were going to be happy with either of two things. He was very popular with the people, so they needed to figure out a way to discredit him to where people wouldn't love him as much as they did. And if that didn't work, because they just wanted him gone. We're kind of having, some situations like this now. If they couldn't get the people to hate him and turn against him, they were just as happy if they got the Roman government turned against him. They didn't care which. They just, they wanted to get rid of him. And in verse 16, and it says, then they sent out unto him their disciples with the Herodians, saying, Master, we know that thou art true and teachest the way of God in truth. Neither carest thou for any man, for thou regardest not the person of men. So these Pharisees, it says they sent out their disciples. So you've got a group of people who have plotted and planned this, and then they sent their little minions out to do their work for them. And they came, it says, Master, we know thou art true and teachest the way. Have you ever known of somebody that didn't like you, didn't have your best interest, but when they come up and present themselves to you, they love you and they're so sweet and good and they act like that, I'm your best friend when really they're not at all. And that's what they're doing to him. They're kind of coming up and acting like it in a respectful way. We know that thou art true. And that's not their motive at all. That, they just wanted to get next to him and get his ear and start entangling him into whatever they could get him into. But they were very deceitful, and they had, it's bad enough if you have your own big plans, but then when you drag others and then even make them do the things, I think that's even worse too, that you have this ugly white heart, but you draw others in and then, cause them to go and do these things. It says in verse 17, Tell us therefore, what thinkest thou? Is it lawful to give tribute unto Caesar or not? So here's the first trick that they're trying to do. They're asking him, the Jews are in this Roman society now. They're in a strange place. They're in captivity, in this, the Romans had conquered the area. And they're saying, can they make us pay taxes? Is it lawful for us to have to pay taxes to him? And, in that, if he had said no, the Roman authorities would have been all over him. Because they grew and become powerful through these taxes that they got. So this was their first snag. They were trying to get him to say, no, you don't have to pay anything. And we know if he had said those and that thing, that the Roman government would have been on him. So, they've planned and they've got a net, like if you were hunting or whatever and an animal's going to run this way when you come after him, if you go out ahead of time and you set up something so when he goes that way, you got him either way. And that's what they think they've done at this point. In verse 18 it says, But Jesus perceived their wickedness and said, Why tempt ye me, ye hypocrites? And as we know from from studies, he calls them hypocrites on several occasions. And it's Buford, I know we've talked about it before in service. Hypocrites are actors. And we had said before that was part of the Pharisees, the whole thing. They acted one way, but their hearts were really somewhere else. So, Jesus knows them. And when you can't help, when you're trying to be an actor like that and somebody calls you out on it, it's kind of, you think you've done a better job than that. But he sees them real quick. He knows that they're plotting for him. He's known the whole time how this end will come and what will happen, and that these people are set against him. But it says he perceived their wickedness. And in verse 19 it says, show me the tribute money, and they brought unto him a penny. And according to this lesson writer, and I don't know, I don't remember ever seeing in the Bible, but it was talking about he asked them to bring him a penny that he didn't have any money on him. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but it really doesn't talk about. Jesus doesn't have this lust for money, or it doesn't talk about the Bible, him setting up businesses, trying to make profit and get a lot of money. But he asked them to bring him one of these pieces of money. And it says the Romans wanted them to pay this tribute money to Caesar in Roman currency, not in what the Jews would have used. And it says, and he saith unto them in verse 20, whose is this image and superscription? So he took the penny out and he looked on it and he's like, who's the picture on that penny? And of course it was Caesar, because he wanted everybody to know that he was the great leader and that all, money and wealth should go to him. And in verse 21 it says, they said unto him, Caesar's. Then saith he unto them, render therefore unto Caesar's the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things which are God. So, he didn't tell them not to pay the tribute. He said, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's. Pay your taxes that are due. The same now, as we talk about, Christians. Your duty as a Christian is to be a law-abiding citizen. Set a good example. Pay taxes. Obey the laws of the land. And if you love your neighbor, you're not going to be out starting trouble in town or doing things that are, it says, the laws which are made for the suppression of evildoers and the maintenance of good order, which are calculated to promote the benefit of the whole and the comfort of the individual, should be religiously obeyed. So these laws and things that part of what we pay taxes for are for our benefit, and it's not something that we would want to not be a part of. But it says, I have read somewhere else, it says, if our purse be Caesar's, our conscience is God's. So, God's not really concerned about the money aspect of it. He wants our heart and our soul. And not to say, being the treasurer, religious churches require money to function, and the Lord asks us to tithe 10% of it. But, I know Tommy had talked to some people he'd worked with that, well, I'm not going to church because all they want is my money. That's all they want. And that's not it at all. The Lord says he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, and it's not money. But these church buildings, there's electricity, there's a building, there's things that they have to do to be able to function. And it's not that the church wants money to waste, but if we come to a nice building and have stuff, it doesn't just, happen that they give churches free electricity and stuff. So it's not that at all, the money portion of it. But, the work for money, if you were taking more money, leaving your people destitute or whatever, and ordering them to bring more money in and stuff, and that's not the Lord's will at all. His will is for us to get his message out and, you know, even whether we have a building or not, you know, that's just kind of a perk on our part to be able to gather, but the Lord doesn't have to have any, you know, anything from us. He is capable of maintaining.
And he also says paying tithes.
Yes, that is part of it, to pay our tithes. Verse 22, it says, when they had heard these things, they marveled and left him and went away. So the poor old guys didn't, either way, they didn't fail. You know, Jesus didn't say to not pay these tithes. And they thought that that this would anger the people possibly too, that he would tell them, you know, to pay these tithes and that the people would be against him. But he's telling them to give Caesar what he demands, but to give the Lord what he asked for also, that you had to be able to do both, and you know, you wanted the honor of the Lord from your heart and not from a financial standpoint. And you know, I think this is why he was so angered in the temple, because all the goings-on that were happening in the temple at the time appeared to be a financial gain, and it had nothing to do with the service of him. We'll go back and read verses 34 through 39. It says, but when the Pharisees had heard that he had put the Sadducees to silence that were gathered together, then one of them, which was a lawyer, asked him, tempting him, saying, Master, which is the great commandment in the law? Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and the great commandment. And the second is like unto it, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the laws of the prophets. So they're kind of let down, I guess, and they have to regroup because their plans have failed, and they have to get another plan because they're not going to give up. And as we know, that they're not going to give up till he's dead. No matter what it takes that they have to do. And we'll see as we go along, they're willing to do lower and lower and lower stuff to try to trap him, but they have no intentions to let him continue. It says, but when the Pharisees had heard that he put the Sadducees to silence, they were gathered together. Then one of them, which was a lawyer, asked him a question, tempting him. So, you know, they're trying to, they think they're even superior to the Lord, I guess, in my look, that they're trying to entangle him in these things, knowing that, you know, this is somebody that they've seen him teach in the temples, and they've already been kind of awe-stricken by how does he know and how's he able to teach in the way he does, because he's not one of them that have been trained up in the priesthood or trained all his life to do these things, and he's able to come and walk into the temples with more knowledge than all of them have. But the lawyer says, Master, which is the greatest commandment of the law? And according to the lessons, it said that the Pharisees, and we kind of do that ourselves if we think about it. Think about the 10 Commandments. In your mind, when you hear them, you can't help but kind of rank them from, it says the Pharisees made a distinction between heavy and light commandments. So some of the 10 Commandments, if we were to look at them in our mind, we would say, well, this is the one, this kind of goes in order if you get one or whatever. But, the Lord didn't rank these commandments according to, you can do this one 100% of the time and 90% that were all written. And it says in verse 37, Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love thy Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind. So that's the number one commandment, is that you have complete love for the Lord, abandonment to him on every aspect of your life. And it says this is the first and the great commandment. And we know if we fall in line with that, the commandments, all of them are going to fall in line after that. If we have that love and respect for the Lord, that we should have. He says, and the second is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. And I wanted to read to you what it said in the book. It says, by this rule we are taught to bear with love and forgive him, to rejoice in his felicity. I meant to look that up, I'm not sure what that is. Mourn in his adversity, desire and delight in his prosperity, and promote it to the utmost of our power. Instruct his ignorance, help him in his weakness, and risk even our life for his own sake and for the public good. In a word, we must do everything in our power through all the possible varieties of circumstances for our neighbors, which we would wish them to do for us. And our situations will be reversed. So it's saying, you know, any opportunity that you have for your neighbor to celebrate with them for good things, cry with them for, you know, if something happens to them, it says to help them with their weakness, instruct ignorance. So anytime you have a possibility, and this is the same vice versa too, you know, it's not always us doing that, it's a two-way street that we would help each other if we see. And not, we were talking last night about judging generation, that everybody's afraid to be judged right now. And if you have a love for somebody, you don't judge them. And, you know, I think there's a real disconnect of what that is. If you're loving and you're attempting to help or to be of some comfort or something, you don't have any judgment toward that person. Because like it said here, to do things that we would expect for ourselves. And if you do things in that way, you know, we all have good times and we all have bad times. We all do smart things and we all do stupid things. and if we truly have love for each other, there's no judgment in that. You know, you might be doing really good and I'm not doing so good right now. And it's not a judgment for somebody to help or you know, be like we said the Pharisees were, that they really like to look really religious and make others look bad, but that's not what we want to do at all. I wish I had kept it. There was something my friend put on Facebook the other day. It was talking about, it started out like if you're living with somebody and not married, go to church. If you have an alcohol problem, go to church. If you have a sin problem, go. Not to stay out and think, you know, I'm not perfect and I can't go there until I have these things taken care of. Because if that was the case, there wouldn't be a church, you know. And that's the place to be if you're having a problem. I mean, you're not going there to get judgment for the people. You're going there to meet with Christian people and to meet with the Lord, not to get judgment, you know, and that's not what it's for. But I thought that was really good, and I wished I had saved it because it was just a whole line of circumstances. But it was like, in spite of all these things, go to church. Don't let things hold you out of church if I'm not good enough to go to church, because none of us are good enough without the Lord's grace to go to church. And, you know, he works out those things for us. It's not people that do it anyway. So, you know, it's nothing to hold back from. Anybody got anything to add? Or did you see anything else from the... You want to answer a few questions, possibly? It says, why did the Pharisees send others to question Jesus? They were the hypocrites that thought themselves to be.
They were cheating.
Yeah, didn't have the guts to do it themselves, so send your minions and get them in trouble. And then if they get in trouble, you can say you never knew them to do that. why they think this question would put Jesus on the spot.
They probably didn't think he could answer.
That,
He answered the wrong way when Susan.
that they thought that one way or the other, that, yeah, that he was
They
gonna
had
make.
two-headed sword.
Ye-
Either
yes.
way, they was gonna.
Yes, that's a
it was
good
gonna be
thing.
win-win for them.
Yeah, Neil, they thought he had a double-edged sword, that he was gonna cut himself no matter what he said, that he was gonna get put down by it. And how does Jesus' answer show his wisdom?
First of all, that on those hypocrites.
Yeah, he, not only that, just with the answer he had, but he knew where that, he knew it before, he knew their hearts even. It was more than just,
He not only said give Caesar, but he gives the God too, so he answered it both ways.
he got both of them. And he did, and they were trying to trap him into either making the people hate him or making the government hate him, but he knew what they were after. It says, what should we give to our government rulers? Do y'all think we should just set on our taxes and refuse to pay them because tell them we're citizens of heaven? We'd probably also be citizens of Eddyville prison or something. But, as we talked, the laws and the government were put there to keep order and to keep, because, everybody has good intentions. So there has to be laws and there has to be an order to society, because everybody has different beliefs and different thoughts. So it's what should we give to God?
Just a fair time.
Everything, tithes are part of it. Give our heart, our whole reverence to Him,
Take care of our neighbors.
and love our neighbors.
Don't be hypocrite.
Don't be hypocrite. It says, why is love to God the greatest commandment?
Is that what he asked her?
That's what He is, I knew what I was thinking. There's a show I watch usually at 1:30 in the afternoon, and it's a bunch of Christian women, and they're just having like the talk, only it's the Christian talk, which is much better. But they were talking about the Lord hanging on the cross. These people who appeared to love Him when He came in, laid out the road, and He ended up hanging on the cross, and none of them knew, at that time they all turned against Him. And remember what He still said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And if you really sit and think about it, because, I was this afternoon thinking, this is your creation, you love them, you have given everything, you've come from heaven where, a glorious being, you've made yourself a human, you've suffered, he had been beaten at that point, he's hanging, and just imagine what hanging from a cross, the pain of it. But still, the love was so much that He said, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That it's almost unfathomable to do that. The closest that we have, and I guess I always relate back, is our children. You love them, you're going to give them every opportunity that they have, and and that's why we say, we want the Lord to come back, but then on the other hand, for our unsaved family members, just hold till they are ready to go. And the Lord loved enough for that. And if you have that love, everything else is false.
If you,
That's what I was gonna say.
I
Yeah.
say, where it says,
From Him, everything else is takes place.
if you give, if the love of God is the greatest commandment, and you give your love to Him, you'll give your love to others as well.
Yeah.
It's just the same.
Then it's easy to love your neighbor, because that's part of it. When you think of the commandments, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, if you have that love, you're not gonna do those things. You're not gonna take somebody else's stuff, property that they worked hard for. If you have this true love. And number 7, I can answer, but I'm not. Is it easy to love our neighbor as ourselves?
No,
Is that always an easy thing?
it's not.
Yeah. And, you know, and sometimes there's contentious situations that you get into, say with physical, that you really don't try, and it gets really hard. I can remember us talking about this before when Brother Roland was teaching about, you know, loving your neighbors, and sometimes you maybe love them, but maybe you don't have to like them so much. You know, they continue to do things, but it's not something that, you know, we should have an ill will toward them. That, you know, we should pray that
You
things
shouldn't wish them to die or nothing.
Right. Yeah. How would entire obedience to these commandments change our world? Can y'all write up a paper on that and hand it in next week?
It would be a kinder place.
It would be a kinder place, yes. Yeah, for sure. All right, well, we've got finished a little bit early unless somebody,
You're not that place to live, too.
yeah. I mean, safer, not,
There'll be no killing.
yeah.
Be a lot less snap for world.
Yeah. You have, you know, if people help and you think, you know, all over the world where we waste so much food over here and countries are starving and stuff, that there should be a way to make that better as we do. All right, well, I guess we are finished.